not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind.
All right, there's a little bit of dog bark. Got that from Dave's channel. Some peeps are now assembling. We have Christian Baxter in from right behind the. Can you hear me, Christian? Does this thing work?
Yep.
All right, I hear you too. Good. All right, this is the Symbolic World Fear of Missing Out FOMO live stream for Friday morning. I just got my virtual ticket to work this morning, so I just caught the Father DeYoung, Jordan Peterson taking over the Q&A all by his lonesome. So all right, Christian, well let's get your report. Someone said I haven't checked your channel yet. You posted a video. What's been going on?
Well, I posted last night just some brief reflections. And then I actually posted the Jordan Peterson conversation question with Father DeYoung.
Oh.
It just went up like probably a few minutes ago.
They're doing a little bootlegging, huh?
Yeah. It's not the whole conference. Come on.
You'd have Jonathan Peugeot with a dog-headed warrior on you pretty soon.
Maybe I should take it down. If I will, if it gets salty. No, I'm actually.
A few views will be okay. If it goes viral, you have to take it down. That's sort of the rule of YouTube. You can kind of.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm outside the VIP lounge where Father DeYoung, Stephen DeYoung's in there, like with a little group of people having a follow up debrief in there. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's just been one of the things Jonathan said last night was that, and you've experienced this in other situations, Paul, is just he's like the important thing, that he wanted to get out of this is for people to just find people.
Yeah.
And so that's been a joy to meet up and share some meals with people and that kind of thing. And I just got out of Neil deGrade's artist talk, and it was really good.
So okay, well let's start. You got there yesterday. You drove?
No, I flew. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Flew in, and yeah, it's kind of like this. I came by myself. It's kind of been a pilgrimage, I'm just finding my way, bumping into people, and trying to embody and not be too stargaze and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's definitely a strange effect that these screens have on us. I mean, and that's all the way back to the silver screen, which is a reflected light, and of course these are lights passing through images. So there's a starstruck thing that happens even with YouTubers, which is a strange thing.
I was on a stream with Teo the other night, real late, getting ready for this, and he said there's going to be people that recognize you here, and I had just only had that thought like a few days before that would actually be a possibility, and then it happened. Yeah, there were a few people that happened like that. So yeah, it's very interesting.
So then you saw Grizz. We got the video of you seeing Grizz.
Yeah, that was again like that moment. I'm the first person. It was like maybe I'll see him out in the wild, and we didn't get the parking pass, and so we were finding our way to these. I was just going out exploring, and he had found this other place to park, and I look up and I said, he waved at me, and I was like, I think that's Grizz. And so I turned the camera on, and so I do kind of.
You couldn't recognize him?
Well, I mean, it was that's his video is real blurry sometimes, you know. I that yeah, that's the I had a thought and I think it just left me, but
well, it was noted on Twitter his complete betrayal of Team Denim. You know, Cale Zeldin immediately scored points.
That's right.
We've got a war to prosecute here, and Grimm shows up in khaki.
Definitely, I could see with the timeline of him trying to find a suit may have been a little difficult before the.
It's my high tech camera adjuster here. So keep going.
Man. No, the getting to experience people. Okay. Here's what I was gonna say. I kind of even coming in and hopping on here is like I feel like I'm trying to balance what does it mean to am I trying to get attention or am I trying to represent people that I actually know on this channel now? And probably both. But I'm like I feel like I do feel like it's a responsibility a little bit to you guys, to this little community.
And you didn't even run a grift. You're paying for this out of your pocket.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, Grizz, now, he's doing his work in the VIP, but he better come on this live stream because he's got people.
Yeah, and I think he has stuff. He's been documenting along the way. I think he's trying to create a little mini doc that he's going to put out too. I think that's that's going to be behind his thing. I think that's part of what he's doing. So he hasn't been maybe as like point and click. And that's the thing. I mean, I don't have I'm not in a place where I can sell this stuff. Yet.
You've been doing a great job, Christian. You've been doing a great job with your channel.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. And again, that's where I'm at in my life and my journey, trying to find a place to approach it honestly and even feel whenever it feels like there's other motivations and just kind of acknowledge that. And so that's even here thinking about, I was talking to my wife about it on the way home. It's like, man, I just hope I wasn't annoying people. But also I'm trying to I spent a lot of money to come here and I'm trying to do, and be a part of this. And so,
So talk to me about the physical surroundings. What is the place that you're meeting in?
I'm in a I'll use the evangelical term. I'm in a family life center. And on the other side of it is a conference room on the other side of that wall. And
is this a church? Is this a school?
Well, there is a school around here, so that may be part of it. I don't know. It's kind of a conference center, and I think it's connected to the Greek Orthodox cathedral here. I think it's connected. There's a huge Greek population here, and I think there's a sport court up here, but this is just where the.
What is the team mascot for Greek Orthodox Christian school?
Right now, it looks like it's a golden dragon, but
it's not the Trojans or anything like that.
Yeah, somebody. Last night
the Trojans
actually,
would have to be the Spartans.
Last night, someone said they were from Troy, and it was like Troy, Tennessee, or something. And then Richard Rowland from the back goes, "We're all from Troy." So yeah. And then I guess if you saw the Father DeYoung video this morning, he was poking fun at the Greek versus the Latin. So,
yeah. That's what we really want to do. We really want to inflame the Greek versus Latin wars.
Yeah, well, I
Because
was actually
that's been so
I,
productive
I'll
for
tell
us.
you a funny story about that. So he spoke first this morning, and I was talking to Father Stephen um, from YouTube Acclaim, and wait, no, not Father Stephen. Why am I
Father
getting this?
Eric?
Father Eric. I was talking to Father Eric, and we were talking about stories in the Old Testament, and he said, yeah. And I come, or I prefer the Latin, making a little tongue-in-cheek joke, and so like that was really fresh in me because the next 10 minutes later there was a joke about it, So and there was some hopefully charitable, whatever.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, it is a. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is an Orthodox conference. I mean, platform.
Yeah.
So. It
Yeah,
is.
except for Peterson, everybody there is, all the speakers are Orthodox.
Yeah, but as my thesis contends is, Martin Shaw had a very evangelical upbringing. Peugeot had, like, you bring it all with you. You
Yeah,
bring it all
yeah.
with you. I felt like if you'll get a chance to listen to Jonathan's talk from last night, I was like, wow, he just did an excellent job sharing the gospel. And, and I'm just like,
The
I mean,
evangelical neo-Orthodox.
yeah. So that's playing out here hardcore,
So give me a sense of who's there in terms of, I mean, we know the headliners, the people on the thing, but the more randos that are there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of couples here. There's a lot of there's a lot of. It's very egalitarian. As I think, who's the guy from First Things that's emceeing this thing?
Here's.
Yes, he kind of was making a joke about it the first night. He was surprised by how many women were here, and I think that's in contrast to, and like Peterson, general type thing. So I think that's pretty interesting. That's on that level, and then uh, a pretty wide range of ages. There's young men, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of really young people here. But it's hard to tell. It's hard. It's getting harder for me to tell that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, attending one of these conferences costs a lot of money.
That's yeah.
You have travel, you have lodging. What was the price of a ticket at the conference?
For I think it was 400 just for the regular pass.
Regular, yeah. So that's a pretty steep. I mean, like the Chino conference, I think was 165, and I think I think Thunder Bay was about 160, 170. So
yeah. And I'll also say it's a reserved group of people.
Which is why we send Grizz.
Well, yeah, to spice things up. What I mean by that is, Peterson's walking around like amongst the people at different times, like before, and he has security with him, but people aren't just
him.
There. Yeah, because of I think the nature of the crowd. Like I think it's a more introspective group of people that are here, not the Petersonian slay your dragons and pick up your load type,
Oh, so how way. Orthodox to the degree that you can, because you probably are more salient with, let's say, TLC folks. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, how orthodox a conference is this in terms of its attendees?
I would say it's, again, this is just straight intuition.
Yeah, that's all you got.
I would say it's probably pushing at least half. Okay. That would be my kind of guess, and which is a big amount. If not more, because again the whole platform is, and so it would basically be people that just listen to these guys on YouTube that maybe aren't I don't know. I honestly don't know, but I
Yeah,
would say
yeah.
somewhere.
How about how people are dressed? Casual, suits?
You know, I would say the millennial hipster. Not. I'm probably one of the few people wearing my hat backwards. But there, it's tucked in shirt, jeans, and dress shoes, and you know, kind of a nice. Yeah, it's fairly casual. It's fairly casual, but some women are wearing dresses. Um, you know, so as one.
Yeah,
Some people
what's the
walking.
weather like?
It's a little. You may know this term, June gloom, from I don't know, from Southern California. It's actually a little cloudy today,
Okay.
and you can get away with the t-shirt. I got a little warm with my flannel on yesterday as the day went on, but it's nice. It's clear.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Any estuary type breakout groups? Now, those of you in the
yes,
hive
one.
mind, what one done by who? Nate?
Well, Nate'll have to tell you. We sat down for some drinks with a group of people, and it was me, Grizz, Nate, a friend of Nate's named Doug, who I think is a commenter, and then a guy named Paul who was at Chino that I met. He's from Austin. His last name's French. I don't know. And it got into some. It was mainly between me and Paul about. Basically, Paul was presenting an idea. I don't want to mischaracterize him, but that everyone just needs to get into Orthodoxy type thing. And I think we all know.
Oh, I was wondering who was going to play those cards there.
And so I, as the least Orthodox person in this, as far as like I'm not attending, I kind of went with some of the arguments that I have that actually I feel like.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely Paul he's the one who came up. If you've seen the video, and he came up
Yes.
and he had
Yeah.
a little sesh with me.
Yes. So I guess I'm representing your spirit, Paul,
Because he
I had
decided to
my
pick on
own
you.
session. Yeah, I had my own session, and it was kind of an interesting feeling walking out from it was a little contentious, and we made up afterwards, and I was walking out with Nate Heil and his pastor, his Father Joe. He brought his priest with him, and I kind of felt like, well, these are my people. I kind of know Nate from being in these spaces with him, and I felt a little known by him. Not just, I don't know how to explain it, but that was a really cool feeling, and it was kind of related to this thing. So
that's the only. Is there? So I'm just gonna. I want to
yeah,
preface this by saying my questions are not criticisms.
that's okay.
I am I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about the rest of the listeners because I am very interested in programming these conferences. And what I said to someone last night was, or yesterday was, often there's a liturgy to conferences that people sort of mindlessly inhabit, and they just slot in speakers, and then a conference is a conference. But it doesn't have to be that way. I'm a deep Protestant in that way because I like to mix things up. And a big part of what John Van Donk and I have been doing with Estuary, and what Nate is working on too, is we want to not just do conferences, but we want to play with the formats.
Yeah.
And that's playing with a pretty deep liturgy here. So for my impression from the website has been, it's been basically straightforward conference. Am I correct?
Yeah, they haven't had a lot of direction for the off time, and I would say that that's where you guys are kind of, from what I've kind of gathered, is being more intentional with that. And so yeah, there's actually a lot of open space, which can be good, but it's more organic than with an intention, I feel like. But Peugeot did put out, like, he wants people to spend time with each other. So I think, but there's not like an intention for cultivating conversation, like intentional conversation, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And that was one of my criticisms of the art conference, where actually, increasingly when I look at conferences, I think the plenary sessions are optional and the between sessions are mandatory, because that's why I go. I FOMO means fear of missing out, and Kale says no, I'm missing out. Chemo, but my friend Chemo, who's I should have Chemo on the channel sometime, but the to me, the real value there is getting to meet you, hanging out with Grizz, spending time with Nate, getting to meet, even that little intercession with Paul Renee. I love that, because that's something you're going to remember from the
Yeah, it's
conference.
memorable. Yeah. I know this person a little bit. I will say they did do this thing where again, I'm blanking on the first things guy who's kind of emceeing his name. Paul Hears. He did this icebreaker and he has this. I made a little video. I need to post it up. He has this number system about how modern or how ancient are you, and we did this. He did 5 questions, and then he asked, and you scored yourself, and then you did the math, and you came up with a number, and it kind of shows. And so there's this graphic that walks you through, and so you can kind of maybe look at somebody's number. They haven't made a whole big deal about it, but then you can, oh, this person's kind of like this, but they haven't pushed it too hard. But that was kind of a personality test-ish type thing.
Dread personality test after I posted that video of the conversation of the colonizing that personality tests do. But so what has surprised you so far? What has been the biggest surprise so far?
Yeah, I think that how Christian it is, and then that Jordan Peterson was wearing a coat that said Jesus Christ on it.
Really? I haven't seen pictures of the coat yet, but
well, I took a picture of the back of 4 people's heads, and it's on Twitter. And Jonathan Peugeot reposted it this morning. But there's 4. It's Martin Shaw, it's Jonathan, Jordan Peterson, and Richard Rohr sitting watching the concert together.
Richard Rohr or Richard Rowland?
Roland, yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, Richard Rohr is there?
No, he would not be allowed. I don't think. Well, I'm sure he would be allowed. And there's this light shining on Peterson, and on the back of his, it's this new. It's like got Greek Orthodox icons on it. So apparently, there's been some contention about if he should be wearing iconography. Which I made the point. I'm like, well, if he's not a Christian, he doesn't have a pastor that can rebuke that. Let him be.
Yeah.
So.
No, Kale, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't been on Twitter today yet. It's been busy. I listened to the Father Stephen DeYoung talk and watched Jordan Peterson take over the question and answer.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
I turned my camera on.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
That's how I felt about it. I was like, oh, I don't know what's about to happen. So I just was like, this is he's talking to Orthodox priest, and it's happening, and this is, I mean, he's been in a lot of other explicitly Christian situations, like even back when he spoke at Liturgy, or when he talks with Catholic institutions and stuff. So I don't know. What did you think about that? That's something, because he was talking about bodily resurrection, and I just feel like how we're getting close to the event horizon with faith and that kind of thing in the conversations with him.
Jordan Peterson's event horizon. I love it. I had a lot of thoughts actually about Stephen DeYoung's talk. I don't know. There is. I'll probably make a video, maybe not specifically about it, but about this dynamic of there. Part of what's happening right now in this space is we are working on some very deep issues beneath the issues that are present in the gospel. And one of those issues is realized versus anticipated eschatology.
Yeah.
And what
Well,
Stephen
that's
D.
almost been a theme. That's almost been a theme when you go back and look at what Jonathan, even on that picture I took of Jordan Peterson and him, he's like, this is kind of my vision of the eschaton.
Yep. And Father DeYoung's talk leans into realized eschatology, but if I would use those words with him, he would probably pull back but I think the Orthodox actually, a lot of the moves that the Orthodox make, and Peterson's made the realized eschatology move a number of times. But then was interesting. So then when Peterson sort of asks his question, Peterson then moves into an anticipated eschatology, a future eschatology, and the ontology of a future eschatology, and the importance of an ontological future eschatology for our psychological realization. That I know I'm probably speaking word
Well,
salad to a lot of people, but you
no,
understand. You've got some theological background, so
yeah, I have a little, it's Baptist, but it is what it is. And the thing about that is, I think the helpful part about it is how much you can contrast, the two ideas. But then the part about what he is always bringing, that either psychological and even a scientific perspective to it, but taking it seriously. And what and he kind of, he drew the parallels between kind of embodying your ancestors. Is that the resurrection of the body versus a more real, stay away from the L word,
yeah.
resurrection of the body.
Yeah,
But
not the L word, but I mean, there's what's interesting is that this is going to be a little controversial. There's, if you listen to enough orthodoxy on some of these issues, there's basically an anticipation of theological liberalism in it. Because if you would take some of what, let's say, someone like Nadia Bolz-Weber says and put that next to Father DeYoung's talk, you're going to find some resonance there. And of course, for a lot of there's a lot going on. Yeah, okay. So we do have figuring out the relationship between realized and anticipated is, because you can sort of say, okay, well, we're going to dismiss the tension between realized and anticipated, but that's a very real tension experientially for all of us. My wife yesterday was, I shouldn't tell stories about my wife, but she was going to work and she was like, if I won the lottery, would I go to work today? and then she said about a situation at work. If I won the lottery, that situation that she kind of talks to me about almost every day when she gets home, I would just laugh at that situation. And I thought, right in that moment, there's the drama between because obviously, say, a lottery winning means a release from the necessity of having to go to work.
yeah,
And now, if I didn't have the necessity to work, how would I then handle the difficult things at work? And you can listen to Tim Keller and many other Protestant pastors make those kinds of references. We're getting pretty deep in the weeds
about vocation, but I would bounce that thought to the one of the deepest thoughts that I took away from our conference was when Jonathan Peugeot talked about care. The first thing I thought about when you said that was, how would I handle this if I won the lottery? Well, maybe a kind of a materialist, nihilistic answer would be like, well, screw them. But if we're human and we're trying to be goodly or godly, maybe we would, instead of never showing up with our FU money, we would go to work and put in our 2 weeks notice, and we would try to make amends or something like that. I'm not saying that's how I am. I don't want to come across as pious, but that's what that makes me think of from that illustration, or that real life situation, actually.
All right, Christian, I have a very important thing I need to ask you to do.
Oh, no.
You have to show us what you're wearing.
All right. I got my khakis on today. I actually, and I'm wearing my I'm not wearing my funky shoes that Kale made fun of on Twitter the other day. But he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know about all these. What's with all these millennials who wear like zip up hoodies and really interesting shoes and act like they don't. And I sent him a picture of what I basically wore the day before. I was like, for some of it's the basic pattern. So,
we are losing the denim wars as we speak. Oh,
I was wearing denim. I was wearing black denim last night, and I'll wear. But yeah, no. I actually am wearing khakis today. That's so funny. I didn't. So Jordan Peterson was wearing denim. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. What of the plenary sessions or breakout sessions are you is the one that you're most anticipating?
Well, I've been least exposed to Martin Shaw. I haven't taken the time to dig in, and I think because maybe a lot of his stuff, other than his conversions, not on the YouTubes, it's more in books. So that's going to be weakness for me. But I am interested to hear from him with that intention, and then I think that I'm interested in that, and there's also one that I'm interested in that's about taking this stuff and how it can be practical in your community or in your life, and so I think that's important.
Let's see. I got distracted by the hive mind.
It's all right.
People are. I mean, the denim wars are being fiercely fought in the hive mind right now.
They're blowing it up. Yeah.
I had a question in mind. What, you staying in a hotel? Staying by yourself? Sharing a room? Are you Airbnb?
I know. I spent a lot of money on this trip, but where I didn't spend a lot of money was where I was staying. So.
Sleeping in your rental?
No, I'm staying on a La Quinta Inn, about 20 minutes from here, La Quinta, whatever those things are called. But just
anybody
hotel.
Camping?
I don't know of anybody camping. I know that Nate got a VRBO with Father Joe, and I think his friend Doug. I think they got a VRBO together. So.
Nate's a chef, and so when he did the DC thing, he had me over to his Airbnb and he cooked a meal and it was wonderful.
Yeah, they talked about that, but they're doing Automata with Paul tomorrow night. That was a part of it. Or I think that's what it's called. It's almost like Toastmasters. It's a formal liturgy to a meal. If you listen to, I can't get the name again. Paul, I got his
Paul Hears. Yeah, he does Paul those. Hears. He's
going to host one. He's hosting one, a part of a extended VIP package that I didn't get because when I signed up for this thing, I used my wrong email and I didn't get any of the updates. And so the only thing I had was a picture I had taken of my actual ticket. So they were like adding things on. They added, spend more money here.
Yeah.
Some of it was important. But Jonathan, actually, to that point, he kind of got, when he got up and shared last night to open it up, that apparently I'd seen this in a Richard Rowland video, but that they'd been having some trouble getting things to work, like with the release of the Snow White book and I think some of the financial things behind all of that. And he said that the virtual tickets actually helped them make it. Well, it could be. But
that's right. It's John Hears, not Paul Hears. You're right, Sanjay.
Okay, so I've got it all backwards. John.
No, I got it backwards. I called him Paul. He's got an Orthodox. I don't know the name of his brother, but I talked to John. I did a conversation with John. So
he's done a good job. He's been funny. It's been good.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. Any sighting of the Grim Grizz suit?
I haven't seen it yet. So who knows?
This is the kind of things we're anticipating. I noted that Strange Theology on Twitter pointed out that the now iconic picture of Grim Grizz holding up his VIP pass, the CIA's shield is behind him.
Oh my gosh. Is it really?
It is. You better watch your step, Christian.
I
'Cause,
took the picture.
You did take the picture. You're exposing the truth.
What if it's the whole time it's he's the 3-letter agency?
That's right. Jacob's been looking around for it, and and here Grim Grizz, he's got the cards, he's got the savings throws. I bet you it's been working for the CIA to infiltrate the TLC, and So
I feel like go ahead.
So Grizz did an opening of his VIP bag. What else has the VIP sort of gotten you?
Well, that I was kind of skeptical for a little bit about the utility of the room back there, but when I came out and Father DeYoung was in there, kind of with people I thought that was a cool extra. And I was only in there for 5 minutes because I had to come talk to somebody else out here. So, but that was a real, I think, value to some people to have a sit down in a it's a small room in a intimate space with a person.
How many VIP tickets did they sell? Any sense?
I don't know. I know they opened it up they opened the extra ones up. So, it's probably there's 3 or 4 rows of chairs on either side that are VIP in the front seats. So, and there's probably 30 chairs a row. So 200, I think something like that, maybe a little less, maybe 150, something like that.
So Faith Encouraged TV says, by the way, the design of Peterson's coat sparked talk because the design is based on an order of monks called the Schema monk. It's very exclusive and filled with meaning. That's what if you just see something and you say, oh, that's cool, I want to put that on my coat, for all of the anti-politically correct dismissal of cultural appropriation, symbolic appropriation can be a sensitive thing with many different communities.
Yeah, that's true. I've never thought about it that way. Is he appropriating something? But maybe you could also look like it's an attempt at somebody to participate in something.
Yep. It goes both ways.
And I mean, it's just so funny because any situation can be critiqued by anybody for anything, and it's like, won't you just become a Christian? It's like Dr. Peterson was like, well, he's here. He's wearing a jacket that says Jesus Christ. He takes Scripture seriously. I don't know what, and we're not static. None of us are static. We are not static. We are moving through time towards a telos of our.
You're so Protestant, Christian. You're so Protestant.
Why?
I think it's a good thing, but keep going.
Oh no, that's it. I just think that he's on a journey. And this movement is, this is. I mean, just think back. You not 2016, 2017, like to where he is now, sitting with Jonathan at this and supporting his friend through that's a beautiful journey. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah. Brother Bob says Peterson is a Christian. I believe that. I don't want to. If you gotta go, I can always
eat something.
If you gotta go, I can let the hive mind in. So, because I sent a link to Nate. I sent a link, and if there are any other people that want to jump in and ask questions or give impressions, it's fine. Otherwise, I'll have to entertain the crowds all by myself. So,
right,
any other last thoughts before you get something to eat? Well, is lunch a part of the conference, or you got to go out to get something?
I don't know. It's a walkable. Here's what I thought when I was coming in. Tarpon Springs looks like any other Panama City, Florida town when you're driving through the main thoroughfare. But when you turn off and go down into their main downtown district, it's a very walkable place where there's cafes, and it's kind of an ordered versus disordered existence in the old town part. So you can go little places, but I see some people with trays over here, so I don't know. I'm gonna go track something down.
All right. So Christian's gonna go get some food, and I'm gonna play a little bit more dog bark. How's that sound?
All right.
And
See you
talk
guys.
around. If anybody wants to join, share the link with them, and because I'm looking for peeps. All right.
Okay.
Take care, Christian.
Does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is.
All right, we have somebody else. We have Kale Zeldin procrastinating, avoiding the grading he must do.
Big time. I mean, well, I keep thinking that these stacks will grade themselves, but we'll see.
There is no agency, Kale. You have to grade them all yourself.
That's what I tell the kids. There's no author, I suppose, is the version of that.
No. So what are some of your thoughts, Kale?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I really wanted to go, and I was going to try to get professional development bucks to make it happen. But because it's fall, I mean, exams end for us today, and then I've got to grade and write comments and everything. So it was really sadly a kind of no-go. But I hadn't thought that it would be like an ortho bro fest, but that makes sense now that I don't know why I didn't think that. But that's always just funny to me, and I'm always intrigued, as a Roman Catholic, I'm always used to being the sort of avatar for like big, old, ancient church guy stuff. And then, the orthos come around and they kind of flex on that too. So it's just kind of funny. So it makes me feel like an American Protestant, which I appreciate.
No, when I saw the lineup, I knew it was gonna, and I saw I suspected. I mean, when they talked about we'll have a secret special guest we'll announce later, it's gonna be Jordan.
I must admit, Paul, I'm so colonized by you. I thought it was going to be you.
Oh no,
I really did. But I forget, that the little corner is not as little as I think it is, and you've always made, there's a Vervakian, side, there's a U side, there's a Pajot side. So I guess I forget because I don't do any of the Pajot stuff really outside of your, like when you bring him on, and I love him and I listen to him, but I'm just not nearly as plugged in. I know there's like a big Facebook. Hey Sam, how's it going, brother?
Hey Cam.
I'm not as plugged into that stuff, honestly, as other people are. So yeah. So anyway, it was JVP. So
yeah. Well, I when I saw the lineup, I knew this was going to be. I mean, there are corners to the corner, and most of us don't get the word on a lot of Vervaeke events because Vervaeke doesn't really host his own events, and this sort of, figuring out how different elements of the corner have sort of grown in terms of institutions and organization. So, of course, the Vervaeke Foundation is sort of the institutional organization of the Vervaeke corner of the corner. Symbolic World, of course, of Jonathan, and there have been some twists on that. Ron and Luke, devices not connected. I see for you. I'll let you in once.
I'd like to say here, Paul. I mean, I think if I not in the spirit of one-upsmanship or anything like that, but Vervaeke is way more plugged into sort of the specifically academic world. So I think anything that he would do would sort of be, people learn to lean really heavily on the platforms that have sort of promoted them or not, but sort of they run into.
Right.
So I'm wondering, hey, Luke, I'm wondering if, so Jonathan is having his version and Vervaeke's is ultimately going to be much more academic oriented. What about yours, man? Let's do this.
We've had Chino. We've had Thunder Bay.
Let's have one out here.
Oh, well, so I
have a place, I mean, I live at a campus. There's plenty of stuff here.
I am thinking of redoing my first conference, which was at my sister's house, where we had about a dozen people, and all we did for 2 days was share meals and sit and talk for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about doing another one of those.
I'm not sure if the scale works anymore.
What's that, Sam?
I'm not sure if you can do it at that scale anymore.
No,
really?
No way. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. You just talk behind your camera all day long. They're hordes of us, more than dozens, right? The dozens meme. There's more than a dozen.
Well, maybe I'll just up the price and we'll only get the rich people there. How about that?
Just up the price the rich people pay, and then you discount the rest.
Well, I don't know. I like that. I like small. I mean, estuary is all about small.
Yeah. So I'm not saying load up to 200, plus, over 200, but I don't know. I just I know I post my little picture of estuary every day on Twitter, but everybody can come see the estuary, and we got plenty of space here, especially in during breaks, especially during the summer break.
Yeah. Somebody asked how many showed up in Battleground. Well, that was true. The pastor asked me how many to expect. I said 15 to 20, and we had about 40-ish. So it was quite a bit. I'm going to take Sam and Luke. I'll bring Kale back in now. Luke, you've what are some of your thoughts, Luke?
Oh man, well, yeah, I wish there was more. My main thing would probably be the issue of scale, and it's actually what I've been talking about lately on my live streams, because I just don't I think if you're going to try to communicate things by a bunch of luminaries on stage that are understanding things through academic scholastic terms, you're forefronting propositionalism versus relational knowing, and I think relational knowing is fundamental, and that requires smaller scale.
Yeah.
And time for people to know and talk with each other, which is why the TLC, as far as I'm concerned, is a PVK corner of the corner. I don't really think the Peugeot and Vervaeke roll in it very much because it's idea centric.
Is that your baby, Sam?
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know what your signal means, Cal.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I hear you, Luke, and I to me, I think of a medieval city, a medieval town, really. And, you've got neighborhoods, and then, you've got neighborhoods, you've got neighborhood churches, and you've got the cathedral. And I think there are real times in which you have to orient toward the cathedral, not as a sort of a day-to-day thing, but as a, it's a kind of hierarchy. There's a sort of a natural hierarchy to that, that, I think people crave, everybody wants to be on the mothership. Right. And so I think people crave those experiences, not just sort of, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
What is, if
I get your allergy to it. I get your allergy to it.
I do agree with you to a sense. I mean, I can.
And elbow bumping into and meeting people and talking to people on the side. Even art, for as broadcasty academic as it was, it sounded like it had a lot of hanging out and stuff like that. And so I think that what are the next biggest conferences in PVK land? And I don't think that there is any sort of flagship concert or conference in the works.
Well, Nate is working on something in the Pacific Northwest, and that's probably going to be at the Olympia CRC because, again, a lot of this is networks. So the Battleground Estuary happened because I had to go to a meeting, and I know the pastor. I know the pastor in Olympia. And so in the CRC, I have a network, and Chino was, of course, in there. But I mean, at least what Vendonk and I think Nate also, what we want to do is not just have conferences. I think we want to play with the format and the implicit liturgies along the lines of what Luke was saying.
Right. You need those. I mean, I think, I think a lot about liturgies and not just, I know like my Catholic liturgy, but I mean just like liturgies of life, liturgies of being. And I feel like we're really not good at those. And so therefore, if I were to, if my 2 cents were worth anything from a planning standpoint, would be, and look, this is implied why I think Grimm talks about paintball for Jesus, right? I mean, the idea is that, it would be like, it's like, I remember the first time my wife threw a birthday party for one of my kids when they were little. And like my sort of sense of it was like, well, we'll have some Kool-Aid and we'll have some cake and some ice cream and like, we'll hang out. And my wife was looking at me like, Cale, you can't just have little kids hang out. You need to give them something to do. And I'm like, well, and of course I now know exactly what she was talking about. And,
right.
It's like, it's why, Thanksgiving in America has become, you go over somewhere and you pre-eat and then you watch a football game and then you eat and then you watch another football game. It's not because everybody's necessarily obsessed with the NFL, but it gives it's something around which you ordinate.
Right. And that's it. So I was really, and again, I'm analyzing here. I'm not critiquing. I want people to understand that. And again, I'm not worried about you guys. I'm worried about just people listening because PVK is on there, criticizing the Symbolic World Summit. I am not. But whereas, when I first talked to Peugeot and he says, I want to talk about the liturgy in your church, I said, our liturgy is a mess. So,
but Paul,
I'm curious about the liturgy of a conference because that's, I think, part of what's going on.
Go ahead, Luke.
So, Paul, I think this is right in line with what Vervaeke and Jordan Hall were talking about recently. They were talking about this transjective, ecumenical type relating and dialoguing about all that stuff. But who actually has boots on the ground evolving and developing this over the past 5 years? Your corner of the corner, and only your corner of the corner. Yeah. I would say. I mean, I don't think the other.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Paul, I think, when people hear the word liturgy, especially in church conversations, the easiest thing to see is, look at the mass or look at the what do the Orthodox call it again? They call it the
Divine Liturgy.
Divine Liturgy. Thank you. Yeah. And, it's like, those are clear and obvious, but I mean, your liturgies are liturgy. I mean, again, it might not be something that I'm accustomed to, but exactly, like if you've been a member of your church for a year, even, you walk in, exactly. And it's all about anticipating, okay, this is when we do this part and this is when we do the next part, and so I don't know. I have obviously I'm biased. I think the Eucharist is the point, personally, but I think you're selling yourself short to suggest that you don't have a liturgy.
No, I know. And I very much know I do. And so for James K. Smith from Calvin, I mean, his whole book, Desiring the Kingdom, that whole series of books, he makes the point that all of life is liturgy. And that was Peugeot's point about liturgies develop. Yeah. And so if you actually want to form life, liturgy and formation are deeply tied. And
there's a great essay There's a great essay. I think it's written by an Anglican vicar. We're talking like 1930s, 40s, maybe. And he talks about the liturgies of life, and he talks about the liturgies of the home. And that was the first time, and as a Catholic, and that was the first time that I really began to understand that liturgy was not just this sort of reserved thing that I do on Sundays or sometimes during the week at 7 o'clock in the morning, but liturgies are sort of scripted play acting into the world, and not fake, right? And look, I think this is what you were getting at with Senstock and this whole kayfabe business. I mean, people hear the word kayfabe and they immediately think you're being dismissive or being playful, but I think there's a deep truth into the way that we organize ourselves through play acting,
Right.
and that's why I think some of that stuff that Peterson did with play and kids years ago now, 3-4 years back, is so important, because when I hear folks here talk about breaking the fourth wall or participation in that Vervaekian sense, I mean, really what we're talking about is like, how are we going to play well with each other? We have that phrase, to play well with one another. And I think that is exactly the crisis that we are facing, is we don't know how to play well with each other. And to Luke's point, I think what you are sort of spearheading in this space is really, I mean, look at the three of us. You're Reformed, Unitarian, same, is that how I call it? And a Roman Catholic. Like, what? Like, and here we are, we're learning, there's a sort of a participatory attitude toward what you're doing here that I think is vital. And maybe that's what Luke is, objecting to in this sort of this scaled up version that's impossible to control. I don't know.
No, I think that's right. And the fact that I'm sorry, I have to publicly apologize to Sam about
lapsed.
Sam has suffered more than I have for the faith. I will completely own that. Sam, you have suffered.
And not caved. I never caved.
Sam has not caved.
I cave every day, Sam. I don't know what you're talking
about. until I get to finally win the battle. And Sam,
anyway. Luke, your Billy Crudup energy is killing me today, man. It's like Russell from Almost Famous. I love it. It's like you're a golden god today, I guess.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, come on! It's like one of the best. Okay, I'll stop. Almost Famous. You were channeling Russell, the lead. So
I don't know. I have this weird thing. My wife doesn't know what it is. Number one, people comment on my looks all the time, and everyone thinks I look like someone famous.
Yeah,
which I don't know what that is.
Well, you do have sort of a Hollywood disheveled quality to you.
It's the jawline. It's the jawline.
Nathan, what say you?
Hey, I just wanted to maybe give a little bit of pushback on Luke's comment. Sorry, hold on, I can hear myself on YouTube. That Paul's corner is the only corner who's facilitating connections. I basically went through the Pajot pipeline and took seriously Pajot's kind of go to church message. And so I think a lot of us who converted, from Peterson to PBK to Pajot, kind of exited more online interactions and started interacting more at our local parishes. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about exclusively the online community.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Which is like a different thing, because like Sam and I have never met in real life, and I don't know, I like Sam's maybe one of my closest friends. Like, I don't know, we know each other really well.
It's true. I still don't approve of the way you dress or the way you look, though. But other than that,
all sorts of people
or your facial hair grooming or any of those sorts of choices. But I appreciate it.
Well, it was funny because up in Battleground, I was talking to the pastor of the church there, and part of what's going on in the CRC right now is that in this whole fight over same-sex marriage, there is a group from really the affirming side who wanted to, because they lost so badly at the last two synods, they started a group called Better Together that was basically, well, we're not affirming. We just don't want the family to split up. And so we want local option and basically all of these things. And they went to the Lilly Foundation and got a $1.3 million grant from the Lilly Foundation. And then when a bunch of people heard that, they're like, gosh, Vanderclay, you're doing, they got nothing going. You're doing more than them. Why don't you go to Lilly and get a, $1+ million grant? So I mentioned that to Van Dyck. I said, yeah, we could probably get a, $1 million for estuary. But then I said to him, would that kill it? And so I think, Luke, you're probably more sensitive than most about this is something that is helpful to, I know that I've been criticized for this a lot, but helpful to keep it small and keep it slow and keep it organic, because money does something to things.
So, okay. So Luke, I'm going to go here. Sorry. So that movie that I just talked about, Almost Famous, have you seen it or no?
It's been a long time.
Okay,
There's certain movies I watched before my mind was opened.
Paul, have you seen it?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay, so there's a crucial moment toward the end of the film in which Jimmy Fallon is this sort of slick producer, and he comes into this sort of up and coming band. And up at this time, they've been taking this bus from small town to small town to small town, and they're kind of going around the country, sort of doing that thing. And Jimmy Fallon's character comes in and says, "Guys, look." You need to go big. This is your moment. Ditch the bus. we're gonna put you in big stadiums. I've got airplanes. I've got the whole bit, right? So so that is right at the cusp. And of course, every band, and this is, I think, really is scaled to what we're talking about here. Every band has to sort of hit that moment. Okay, like we can hit the status rocket that we have been. I mean, since I've been playing in my garage at the age of 12, this is the moment. This is the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But am I going to sell out? Right? And I think that. Look, I noticed today, Paul, in the Hive Mind, like all this stuff about grift, right? And and look, this is something they're right, exactly. This is something. Yeah, I know, it's remarkable. This is something that I think about all the time, as you know, Paul, right? Just like the dangers of falling into the territory of grift, and I think it's proper to be mindful of that sort of thing. But I feel like in this, especially this side of the little corner, we get really, really sensitive about the sort of the turning it into the grift. And I just, again, I'm not saying I don't know where the line is myself, but I think it's okay to play with that line a little bit. It's okay to be successful. Right. Paul, you and I had a personal conversation about being poor for Jesus. Right. And the thing that haunts me all the time is that, I have, like you, I have chosen meaning versus money. And I just wonder if I've been way too radical about that, about that line. And so I like Peugeot, and I don't think, people will say that Peterson is sold out because of the Daily Wire and all that sort of stuff. And I just don't really think that's true. I think it's actually kind of security more than grift. And so what is the thing? Because I think the three of us would all agree that like what we are doing, what you're doing, Paul, and what I'm participating in here with Luke and everybody is a good thing, period. Full stop. It's a good thing. And so good things are meant to be shared, right? And so how can we best share it that preserves its genius, like its spirit, but doesn't sort of keep it under a bushel?
But I think that's fundamentally the problem of mammon, is that when you want to keep it and control and capture the spirit, you take God and you turn into mammon. I think almost every time, and the spirit moves where it will. That's always why I've been so. I just joked with Paul on our way to Thunder Bay, because remember you were talking about the Israel trip, and you were saying Peugeot was going over there, and well, I don't know, and I was like, yeah, Paul, just go over there. Go to Israel. Just
get behind me, Satan.
Get the status. Get the money.
There is though. I mean, part of what I think Grizz does really well is that he inverts this stuff. Yeah. I mean, the goalpost grift.
Yeah.
Where I mean, he is the televangelist of the corner in the funniest way, and he can do it because his channel is small. And he
Right.
can do it because there are days his channel is unwatchable. Sorry, Grizz, sometimes your channel is unwatchable, but
If
it's
he was
it's
tempted-
unwatchable in the same way the Freddie and Paul show is.
If he was tempted like Jesus in the desert, if anyone were truly tempted with that, I mean, that's the thing. I will give you all this. That's always the temptation of scale and power and money. And it's hard to get a man to see something if his salary depends upon him not seeing it.
Amen.
It's really hard.
But then, I mean, but the church works in this world. I mean,
But not of it.
I know, but look, again, as the sort of the local, Roman Catholic here, it's like, it's the absolute mess of the hierarchy, right? I mean, it's people. I know people will prattle on about, the donation of Constantine, and the church has been wrong since then. And, I get what they're saying. Look, Dante himself explicitly talked about that. But like, you need to actually have a building, and you need to have a priest, and you need to have, all the things. And so as soon as you start doing that, what is the line, the bird worries not about, sorry, I just outed myself as a bad scripture guy, but,
You already said you were Catholic.
yeah, hey, there it is. So but the Saint
Just kidding,
Francis
Catholics.
it's like you can study this dynamic in the formation of the
The bird worries not, but you see dead birds every day.
Right.
There it is.
Right. So, but if you think, Saint Francis of Assisi is the sort of the model for this. And if you've ever read, kind of a write-up on this, that like he wasn't trying to establish an order, right? The Franciscans actually kick him out of the Franciscans at one point toward the end of his life because he was too radical. He was too much. It was too much Francis, right? And so I believe that the tension is not solvable. This tension that we're talking about. And it's very tempting to be a purist. Believe me, I have in my own life been very tempted to sort of go in that direction. But I think there's a maybe, for me, I'm speaking here, maybe there's a cowardice that hides behind pure seeming.
It also, I think you're exactly right, Cal. And I've thought about this a ton, and I continue to wrestle with it regularly.
Yeah.
And I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about a lot of opponent processings.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been rereading both.
What?
You went silent.
Sorry, I hit the button on my mic. This is a great book. Unfortunately, when I mentioned it in my channel a couple of years ago, I completely drained the used book market of it.
Yeah.
So now you got to pay like $800 for a used copy of this book. So capitalism at work, boys and girls. Maybe they'll put it on Kindle. I've been reading that, and I've been rereading Carlos Eyre's Reformations. Which is a terrific book too.
It's really necessary reading. I mean, for all of us, it really, really is.
Yeah. And and so I was thinking about sort of the opponent processing that happens with the Protestant Reformation, and sort of what's happening right now is there's sort of a swing back to a lot of the pre-Reformation things, the need to embody, the need to instantiate, the neo-sacramentalism. And so because we as human beings can't get these things right.
That's right.
And when you listen to Jesus, so last week I just preached on, when Jesus. So there's the story of the rich young man. So you have women and children. If you go back to last week's Rough Draft for Sunday, maybe I'll post the full sermon on my channel, although the sound is never good. And my real sermons are contextual. You can always see them on the church channel. And the link to the church channel is always below. But the Jesus, when Jesus is just blowing their minds in terms of this money question.
Right.
But then he flips around the other way, and he flips around the other way. He just keeps flipping it around. And that's similar to the realized versus anticipated eschatology questions. And that there are so many of these issues. And I think part of what Jesus does again and again is basically say, in this era, in this dispensation, you cannot solve these issues.
Right.
And God and mammon is one of them. Now you can, if you go all the way to one side. But what happens when you go to all the way to one side, like with St. Francis, you sort of wind up flipping around.
That's right.
Because
The Tao.
yeah,
I think
it's
so,
just
Luke.
it's
I
just
think
this
so.
nature of this reality right now, and it just keeps scaling down. So
Look,
and so
to
that's
me, this is an intimation. This is an intimation of our inborn desire for heaven, right?
Yes.
Heaven is the cessation of tension. This is what peace is, right? The peace is the sort of being freed from the contingencies of having to stay atop the surfboard, right? It's like here I am here, like, and we know we all have a taste for that. That must simply point to the beyond, right? Because there is no rest here, right? There is no abiding city, etc. It's like, so I think to attempt to solve the problem rather than to balance the problem is, I think, the heart of much skullduggery in the world.
Well, everyone has to live with the problem. That's what these problems create. We all have to live with them. And Luke lives with it in terms of his family, because you cannot be a father of a family and completely avoid the problem. And so as much as Luke would love to live stream all day, every day, God has given him a wife that is, a thorn in Luke's side sometimes and helps him be a good father, which is exactly what she should be doing. But yet Luke is also building into those children, Luke's insight of, the flowers of the field and the birds of the air.
They are, we'll see. It's an experiment how it is with, my kids are basically raised on the line of the Tao. My wife of like order and structure, and me of just like complete chaos and absurdity and nonsense. And they're just right in the middle there.
Yeah. And as they grow, they will, you'll just watch it. And so that's why balance is sort of a metaphor that we try to use, but it doesn't really balance either.
Well, right grip is probably, I've always, as soon as I heard Vervaeke say that on video from Chino, I think that's where he first started carting that out. At least that's where I heard it first from him. Like, that makes so much sense to me, because if anything with a handle, it's like every time you swing the thing, every time you get a hold of the thing, you're finding it, like, for balance, for different shots, for different moves, whether it's a hammer or a golf club or a spade or whatever it is. It's like you're really always adjusting for that moment, and it's active. It's not, you're never done. Like, you never grab the club. Finally, I grabbed the club the right time, and it's like, no, like, every time you have to kind of keep redoing that. And so therefore, no rest.
That's that beautiful personal knowing, because it is relative and contextual to every situation, but not arbitrary.
Right. That's right.
Exactly right. And Jesus, the reason Tom Holland says Jesus is the greatest short storyteller ever, in the world, even when he gets at, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what's God. I mean, that's just like, you can't get to the bottom.
That's right.
Of that saying.
Right, because it's what is that concept in physics where as soon as you try to like pin down a thing, it moves.
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Yeah, it's like, I think that's embedded in these sort of parabolic teachings of Jesus. It's like, you think, oh, okay, that's what I need to care, right? Or like, go and sell everything you own, right, and follow me. It's like, okay, that's what I have to do. And then you go and do that, and you screw it all up, right? Because you forgot all the 20 other things you have to kind of keep in some kind of balance. And I think we want to isolate it, pin it down and make that the thing, and then everything will flow from it. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah. And the, Dr. Jim says, Dr. Jim says, capitalism is the enchantment of our age. And the truth is that when you make decisions with respect to this, these decisions will bind you. So, I talk to my children about, because my children are now at the age where they're just getting into careers. And I tell them, I say, there is a relationship between meaning and money when you get into a vocation. There are some vocations that are deeply meaningful and the money will be small. And there are other vocations that are deeply lucrative and the meaning will be small. Now, sometimes you get both, and that's really wonderful when you do. But there are these trade-offs. And And the thing is, I watch it with people too. What Jesus says about money is true.
Yeah.
And Paul, so this isn't behind your paywall, so I don't know if we can talk about that guy you spoke to, who's the successful businessman, consultant in England, whatever.
Yes. No, that's not behind the paywall.
It's not anymore? Okay.
No.
So this is like almost proving the point of what I would call technological babble in the closed circle of systems with money in regards to everything. He is hired as a consultant to come in because all the people that are in the system can't see outside of it, and they just keep trying the same things over and over and over in this binary way because they've made themselves into machines, and they can't figure out why it's not working. And then he comes in from the outside and he's like, well, this is why it's not working, dum-dums. Like, this is obvious. But you can't be closed in that closed circle. This is why religion and conversations and everything has to be constantly dynamic. This is my beef with confessionalism.
So Luke, what's interesting to me about this is that, so I teach for a living, and, for years I was an academic administrator, and now I'm back into teaching full time. Right. And like, I have like loads and loads of experience with this stuff. Right. And, I can go online and talk to other people about like what I know as a teacher and all that. And I have genuine wisdom and insight into these sorts of things. But I guarantee you that I cannot go up into my, faculty meeting here and say the things that I know to my colleagues, because they're like, Cale, who the heck do you think you are? Like, I see you like change into your golf clothes to go coach the team. Like, who do you think you are? Right. And so there's this weird dynamic where I would be, I think, somewhat of a commodity to another outside place about the insights that I might bring to the classroom. But my fellow colleagues would just be like, yeah, shut up, dude. We know you.
Well, and they're part of why the church has been wrestling with these issues always, all the way back to Ananias and Sapphira. All the way back to Jesus pay. It's so funny that we're talking about money and Chad just keeps dropping the super chats.
Well played, Chad. Well played.
I think
Chad.
This is to Chad's point, though. The reason AA works and why it hasn't been beholden to systems and manipulation is because it has precluded money.
Yes.
That's why.
It's also. Go ahead, Cal. It works from the money of others.
I was just going to say, it's like it doesn't not need money. It's not sourcing it in the way that other institutions source their money.
Right.
So you're saying it's parasitic, but it would still work.
No, not parasitic. No. Not parasitic. It's gift. It's the spirit of gift.
It lives like the birds of the field, but birds die every day.
Right.
Sure. It would work in sub-Saharan Africa.
That's the reality. That's the reality of this. Now, when I say dispensation, it doesn't mean I'm a dispensationalist.
Yeah.
The word is older than you guys know this, but when I say that word, I know as a preacher, when you use words, you learn. You don't just have to sort of live in this technical world. You have to live in the real world where everybody else uses language.
Don't lie. We can see the Left Behind series behind you.
Ducks eat bread. Contributions, not donations. Kayfabe is big business. But I want to get back to the conference a little bit. Impressions from you guys. I did buy the virtual thing basically because it was. How can I not know what they're talking about and run this channel? So for me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to see what's going on there, because I at first I was like, I have limited amount of time I can actually leave Living Stones, especially Sundays, and I knew I couldn't do this conference and be back on a Sunday, but
here's one thing, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead,
So I don't know if you saw this yet. I'm assuming you have, but like Jordan Peterson retweeted or whatever, Paul Antleitner, who posted a little thing from Joe Rogan talking about how like essentially the world needs Jesus now and we're in dire states, and then Jordan Peterson said he's going to be back
soon, Joe.
Yeah, like he's going to be going back on Rogan soon, where I'm assuming they're going to be talking pretty explicitly about religion and Jesus and stuff.
It's going to be interesting.
So I don't think Joe Rogan understands the second coming, but that's all right. anyhow. He's like, we need Jesus to come back.
Anticipated versus
Right,
realized
right.
eschatology. We're back to that one.
Right, totally. So I don't know. In light of all this, I mean, I didn't buy access to it. I'll see stuff when it comes out or
Yeah, me
whatever.
too.
I wish it weren't quite so ortho-broy, as Kale said, because I don't know. I think Orthodoxy
Because
means,
you are Luke. You join the Orthodox Church and you get a rash from Orthodoxy. That
No,
is so you, Luke.
I don't know. It's not even that. It's it's what Brad Jerzak calls the Eastern Rite evangelicals.
Yeah.
The people that convert to Orthodoxy and want to just convert everyone to the new exclusivist religion of the right side of history, which isn't what Orthodoxy does. That's what evangelicalism does.
The Eastern Rite.
No, I think
What did you say?
Eastern Rite evangelical.
Oh my goodness.
Look, because Luke, you and I both know, and I know this, a lot of my Catholic brothers and sisters, especially conservative and trads, don't understand is that we're all Americans.
Yes.
And we absolutely kid ourselves to suggest that we haven't been opponent processed into, we're all radical Protestants.
The modern world, the modern technocratic world is Protestant.
Yeah. Right. And so I just, so all this sort of grandstanding that I see from ortho bros and Catholic trads, it's just low res and it's cope or whatever sort of sneer I can drum up. I'm not trying to be a jerk about this either. It's just, this is why, maybe Paul, this is why finding your channel all the way back in the day when I did was such a breath of fresh air for me, because I was very, very close to going full bore rad trad, like I'm sick of all the MFers, and I talked myself off the brink of it because I realized it was in fact a kind of a LARP too far. And again, this is coming from somebody who actually believes in LARPing, right? So, and I really mean that unironically. It's how we live and move and have our being. Yep. But it's this shrinking of the world, right? That you see again, using your phrase, Luke, is sort of the evangelical Catholics and the evangelical Orthodox. It's just sort of this strange shrinking of things. It's like, well, it's just these 10 things. And if everybody just did these 10 things, everything would be just fine. And it's like, come on, how old are you? Right. It's like, I'm 51 now. Like, it's like, stop it. Just stop it. Just stop.
Well, but all of that, we spoke about this explicitly, me and Mitch this morning on the live stream that I did, is like but I think that tension, that exclusivist religion of the right side of history, is the tension that has brought us to where we are. Because I think there was salvation for the Jews, which was for the world in Israel. And in Christ, I think there's the particular exclusive Jesus, which is for the world, for the person and for the individual, which we are living out here in these tensions in the West. And I think, I don't know, because like it does matter. A lot of it comes down to me. I think Jordan Peterson, this whole conversation, the Jordan Hall Vervaeke conversation, TLC is only here. We're having this Kairos moment because of the meaning crisis, because of the nihilism of the West, because the whole world has been Protestantized.
Right. Yeah. Again, in a small p sort of way. And I think that's exactly right. And, the way that I make peace out of it, for me personally, and I may have shared this with you, Paul, I'm not sure, but is that I understand this place to be purely liminal. Like, this is not a telos. This is what we're doing, even like just literally right now, physically right now, versus what we're doing with TLC and what we're doing on YouTube, is that it's liminal. It's something has risen up that affords us an opportunity to create what the flotillas and life rafts and whatnot. But this is not our destiny. Our destiny is not YouTube. Our destiny is not, whatever I can do in the online space. Destiny is, meet space. Yeah. But for whatever reason, wait, what?
This is the dojo.
Well, right.
This is the virtual Silk Road.
Because it's where it's allowing people. What does everyone say who's in your corner of the TLC? I had no place where I could talk about these conversations.
Right.
And it's also, as Joy, I keep telling, as Joy's church adjacent, I am not starting a new church. I am not starting a new church. We have plenty of churches, okay? You have Orthodoxy, you have Catholicism, you got how many kinds of Protestantism? I'm not starting a new church. But I do want to help people. It's mere Christianity hallway. I do want to help people find a room. I mean, that's been my goal all along.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And so for me, I can, waddle on up to mass on Sundays, and I'm not being killed every Sunday. And I used to get killed going on Sundays, right?
Oh, say more about that.
Because I'm there and I'm looking around me and I'm listening to the homily and I'm watching a kind of meh liturgy, and I just know that it could be so much better, right? But then so then you start like, well, this is terrible, and this is terrible, and this is terrible, and this whole thing, everybody sucks, and you sort of play that game. And Chesterton has helped me in that regard.
Yeah.
But specifically, like these kind of conversations and listening to Paul like on the regular all the time has meant that when I go to mass on Sundays, and this might sound cheesy and hokey, but I can focus on Jesus. I can focus on me getting right with Jesus, preparing myself to receive the Eucharist, and ultimately doing all that because I've got my my 3 kids next to me, and my wife is next to me, and we're at mass, and like I don't need to get out of this liturgy every last little drip and drop that'll satisfy my monkey brain, because y'all know, like I'm thinking all the time. Like you can't shut this thing up. I wish I could, but I can't. And so like that's why I like Twitter. And like sometimes I do stupid things on Twitter, but oftentimes I'm just like, get out. It's here and I need to get it out. I need to get it out. I need to get it out. So it's liturgical for me. So I swear, I bet you could like look at my Twitter feed and know like, oh, okay, Kale's up early. So he's like sending out like 30 tweets in a row because he woke up and he's got 50 things on his brain and he got it out. And so now I can go and approach my day. I can do my class prep. I can do all this sort of stuff. And so when I go to mass, I don't need it to be perfect. I just need it to be good enough.
Yeah. And I think, so then I think about the medieval village, and I think about many churches, and I love all my videos, but I love some of them more. The video about sophisticated Christians and simple Christians, and the Lord has cursed us with the jobs we have, the brains we have, the temperaments we have, all the things that we have. And I think you really nailed it, Cale. This is a liminal space, and this is a big cope for a whole bunch of us to help us stomach what we have to stomach for the good of the world. And so it's a gift from God for us to talk about our stuff. I mean, and what to me smells like the Holy Spirit. Luke, your morning live streams have been just tremendous. I mean, everybody's known you've been a big presence here, but at least for now in this season, these morning live streams, you've sort of found your platform.
Well, it's almost exactly what Cale does. I think I might stop all YouTube for Lent too. So, but a
little late for that. Or
mine hasn't started.
Orthodox Lent hasn't started yet.
They have a delay. Yeah, they're delayed from the Western calendar.
We're delayed.
How long?
From my perspective, I mean,
it's been weeks.
Yeah, it doesn't match up.
Okay. Well, we'll miss you, but that's okay.
So, but yeah, that's exactly what I do. Is like I come in, and I just like don't open it up for a while, and I just talk to my like in this frantic, almost neurotic thing for like a half hour to myself, looking at comments, and then I let people in, and it's I don't know, but I am the same kind of person. Like I need that. Like this is what my buddy Cal says all the time too. He's just like, what else is there to think about than theology? Like what else do you think about? Yeah. Like this is all I think about all day long. And my family grounds me. My wife grounds me. She's like, okay, she tries to listen to me for a while until her eyes glaze over. And she says, let's get practical. But it's, I love it. I don't know. I absolutely love it. It's where I feel this is my flow state,
navigating patterns.
Yeah. Navigating patterns.
Yeah. So Luke, for me, like that has always been my classroom. you know, that it's funny because it's a very structured place, right?
Is CW at your door, Luke?
I hope not. No, I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kale. Keep going.
No, just like, you know, so for me, that flow state has been my classroom, right? That it's interesting because it's such a scripted place in some senses, right? But that always comes in. But yeah, no, I think that's right, Luke. It's a flow state experience for me. Like that's what draws me into it. But do you find that then that makes your day like I can like do my day now? Is that how you feel about
Yeah,
it?
somewhat. Yeah, somewhat. I get it out. I mean, I have normal because I'm like that. Like I'm crazy, or like Joe Rogan will say, if I didn't work out every day, I'd be a psychopath.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same way. Like I got to work out.
Yeah.
I got to do this kind of stuff because I have, I don't know, I'm like 98th percentile enthusiasm or something on the Big Five. Like it's a lot. You know. So
Well, and Kale, your poetry on Twitter, I mean, that's a blessing for Twitter because Twitter can be inane insanity, and to just drop someone who knows that world and to just drop a little bit of poetry on Twitter. I mean, that, and I think, and for me, Luke, it's the same way. People say, are you going to quit YouTube? It's like, no, I'm doing therapy. I don't hire a therapist. I've got all of you listening for free.
Yeah.
Some of you pay to listen.
Well, and did you see? So Abigail Schreier was back on Rogan, and they were, because her new book is like the problem with therapy with kids.
Bad therapy, yeah.
Because she's saying essentially therapy, a lot of modern therapy is just you hyper focusing on yourself and your problems constantly, and that's not good for you. And so, but this is different. Like this is why the TLC thing is different. I go on there and I talk for a while, but then I try to open it and have hospitality, and I shut up and I talk to other people and I ask them what they think, and I don't always just try to insist on my own points and proving everyone wrong at every point I disagree with them. Like that's what TLC is good at, is creating a space for people to think about what they think and then maybe be honest and actually figure out what they think so that they can believe well, which is when they act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys had to do a conference, to get back to the title of the grift here, if you guys had to do a conference, what would you like to do? Who would you like to have there? What would be sort of your dream? See, and that's part of, to sort of pitch Nate, when I was sort of dreaming this up with Vendonk, the point I made was I didn't want this to be Estuary Inc. I want to see people have a vision for a conference and pursue it. So like Nate's conference, that's going to be very Nate, and it'll be very Grail country. And so as these smaller channels sort of develop, I want to see a Grizz conference, and I want to see a Grail country conference. I want to see a Kale conference. I don't know that Luke can ever have a conference. I think it's just too ordered.
We have a very gifted group up here, but
I know I've been waiting, and I know that I've been waiting for the Minnesota, the estuary of Minnesota, to sort of, reveal itself to the world, because you've got an amazing group.
And Paul's never gonna be with us now on his status rocket after the Jordan Peterson retweet. He's just, Paul won't join our lowly group down here.
Tweets don't get you very far. Trust me. I know this.
So no, I mean, we're doing your slow ferment, Paul. We'll have one eventually, but it'll be very our style. It's not going to probably be big and fancy. It'll probably intentionally not have big names. I don't know.
I mean, for me, I would want to run part of me wants to be, it might sound silly, but practical. So therefore I want to get together and read old books together. Right. So like kind of a defense against the dark arts conference. But I don't know. I mean, could you get 20 people, together for several days and read the Iliad? You see what I mean? You see,
that'd be cool. Yeah. No, I know. It'd have to be small. It'd have to be small.
I mean, I've done it. Like I've done a conference where I've had 15 teachers, and then we've come and we've read like Augustine's Confessions together, right?
Yeah.
And like it's amazing to read like one book, just one book, go boom, 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 all together, and it's a tremendous experience. And so for me, the hope, of course, is not to sort of cover it all, but to to generate a kind of shared experience in which you could say, okay, like there are things here that I need. As Vervaeke has quipped, wisdom is not optional. All right, well then what do we do about it?
Yeah.
So, and I think too often in these sort of thinky talky spaces, the wisdom tends to get translated as philosophy or theology. And I love that stuff too, but I'm a lit professor, that's what I do. And so I think that poetry, and I mean poetry, not just lyric poetry, but poetry, broadly understood, and is absolutely essential. And I do feel like we are cut off from that.
Yeah,
that's what I would want my conference to sort of my dream conference to be about.
All right. Well, it's the hive mind is resounding that we have a new guy in this. So Stephen, what say you?
Well, this is a very surreal moment for me, because I followed the Peterson-Peugeot pipeline, discovered your videos on JP back in 16, 17, and obviously never interacted online with anybody. But the reason why my story is a little more unique is my godfather is Richard Rowland.
That's funny. Oh, that's great.
So, mind you, being a single guy 5 years ago, hear about Orthodoxy, do the whole Orthodoxy conversion thing. Richard had been going to the same parish with his family. And the way our relationship started is he caught me reading Matthew Peugeot's Language of Creation book. And that's how our friendship started.
Oh, wonderful.
And, what's really funny is I knew him for years and just assumed because he had 5 kids and was established and taller, a little more gray. I have more gray now. He was older than me. I am 6 years older than my godfather. But it's just a unique experience I had the other day, because it's weird following all you online, hearing conversations with Jordan Peterson, John Peugeot. I have this weird, I'm a nobody, but I have this weird insight through my godfather into the hierarchy. So, unlike other people who are on this online sphere that have formed relationships online, they don't have what Paul talks about. They don't have access to the elites in the specter, which I'm in this weird group where I'm a nobody, but also have this weird, access to the goings on. But it's just surreal. But on your note, Kel, about reading good books, Richard is a lovely, lovely human being. I can't tell you how good a person he is. And it's just, so the online thing is weird because of the lack of intimacy.
Yeah.
But when you have a guy like Richard that does the YouTube things, but on Friday nights he's reading Dante with a small group of people.
Yeah.
And he had, I don't know how we joke that he has 72 hours in a day because he has a full-time job and 5 kids and is doing a diaconate program and is research. I don't get how he does it, but I want people to know that he's a guy that's doing the thing. He's not just doing the online thing. He's doing the heart of it, which is mentoring people and dealing with the muck and the disagreements, and just he's doing the thing. So it's just so. Go ahead.
That shines through. I mean, I've mostly watched his Universal History with Peugeot, And he is the star of that show. Nothing against Jonathan, but Jonathan knows it. Jonathan's like, here's the platform.
Get out of the way.
And that's exactly what he said when he was on my channel. He says, I'm not going to make a channel. I'm just going to go on other people's channel. I think that's an absolutely great strategy, because once you make a channel, you have to maintain the dumb thing one way or another. It's so why build your own platform when you're invited onto others? And no, Richard is by all means the genuine article. That just shines through.
But it just makes it obviously the online criticism and Twitter criticisms, but
who's criticizing him?
Well, no, just the Symbolic World Summit.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Criticizing it?
Well, I mean, in the sense of even people criticizing how much it costs to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's that money thing.
Well,
so that's what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get it, because it's like, we all of us go to the grocery store, right? All of us can tell exactly like what things cost. And I think what I get frustrated with people who will go off on the grift element, like I saw like the Symbolic grift, and they're like, ha ha ha, right? Okay. But my problem with that is that, especially in Christian circles, there's this weird thing that, apparently the laborer is worth his hire only if he doesn't work in the church, right? Or parachurch type things. Or these kind of, but Pajot's worth his money. Richard's worth his money. Like, these are not, I'd like to think that, with the kids who come into my classroom, like I try to be worth the money that I know they pay in order to hear me out and let me work with them and work on their writing with them and all those kinds of things. And so I get frustrated with the grift smear big time. And Paul can tell you that. It really drives me up the wall.
Yeah. But what I want to say something about conference and cost.
Yeah.
Because I have walked through Catherine with the Thunder Bay conference and John Van Donk with the Chino conference. It's a terrifying thing, because if you're going to do a conference, it is an enormous financial, if you're going to do a big conference, it's an enormous financial risk.
Yeah.
And, you're sick. You've got to plan this thing like 6-8 months in advance minimum. And there are people that need to be paid. You need to arrange a facility. You need to arrange caterers. You need a web presence. You need all of these things. And all of this stuff costs money. So then you're maybe 20, 30, 40 grand into this thing. And then you have the question, is anyone going to come?
Right.
And then, it used to be, when we did Thunder Bay, were either John or Jonathan or I going to get speaker fees? We didn't know. Which was fine. But at that point, John had his, university position. I have my church. Jonathan was the only one sort of money. Now Jonathan has a speaker's fee, which you can waive, of course, but I completely understand. And so there is, but this is what happens. And so then if you're going to do a conference, you got to think really seriously, because sometimes you put out the call and people don't come and you take a bath. And if you've got a family, and that's why that this is tough stuff. And it's, you can do stuff with no money, but there are always costs involved. And so it's wonderful to do things with no money, but there are costs. So 400, that was a lot. But I don't know what they had to, Chino and Thunder Bay, they basically knew they could, if the conference folded, both Catherine and John could say to their churches, and the church would be, don't worry about it. We haven't incurred any cost.
That's right.
But if you don't have, like, I'm still playing around with, should I do a Living Stones conference? It's going to be small because I have a small facility, but I can use the facility. And now if the conference pays off, Living Stones will get a conference fee to pay for the facility.
Right.
And hopefully there'll be speaker fees. But to plan a conference for 100 people is different than 200 people. And I'm also curious what the top end is, because all of that money is real.
Right.
So, and it's also difficult in this age of online. And this is why I'm sort of giving all this disclaimers with all of my questions. I've got a lot of questions about this conference, and I'm not criticizing. I just want to know, because what I want to facilitate is Minneapolis doing a conference and Chicago doing another conference and Nate doing his conference, because my vision is I would like to see a lot of conferences, probably most of them smallish, but all of them expressing. So Nate's conference is going to be Grail Country-ish.
Yeah.
And the DC conference, that was so cool, but it was totally Roman Catholic. And so each of the conferences, and so this is an Orthodox conference, and I think that's great.
And it's just a strange space. It's really, really weird.
What do you mean, Steve?
Well, I mean, Orthodoxy is still such small potatoes in America.
Yeah, and people don't understand that.
Right. Oh, like in this world, they think like a third of the people are Orthodox. Like whatever. It's like no, not really. Yeah.
No.
But honestly, that's why if you are Orthodox, especially a convert, you have to think something strange is going on.
Yeah.
Because a conference with Orthodox people.
Yeah.
But also, yesterday I was listening to Joe Rogan and Cat Williams.
Yeah.
And Cat Williams brought up the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, I know.
And they talked about angels and demons and aliens for 3 hours. In what world?
Look at that one.
Yeah.
But what world do we? Of course, they were high as a kite at the time too. But that's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well, this is so. I haven't done the video yet. I've had anyway. But I've been working on my second conversation with Peugeot, because he sends a number of, one of the nice things about time and having these recordings is you can go back. And we can go back to that moment. We sort of remember that moment, but we go back to it. And a bunch of the things Jonathan said in that video are very interesting now. And one of them is, he says, well, now we can talk about angels and demons, and it's like no big deal. And it's like, yeah. And then John Vervaeke says Hermes, and the world loses its mind. And on Joe Rogan, you got a dude talking about angels and demons, and Joe Rogan has this. So he's talking to Aaron Rodgers of all people, who has had his own interesting relationship,
an ex-evangelical,
yeah. So, I mean, we are in a super interesting time, but the world is very big, and our impression. So I did a little bit of math, and I think basically as Luke said, the Eastern Rite Evangelical Orthodox, that's a smaller group than the Christian Reformed Church.
Right.
And the Christian Reformed Church is not a large denomination. And so it's very interesting, because I would imagine that your immigrant Orthodox communities are, they're different from now your new American and Canadian and former evangelicals coming into Orthodoxy. It's just going to be a different group. And, God bless the Orthodox hierarchy, because
I'll give you one example that Richard brings up is, so Orthodox churches have parish councils. That's a Protestant thing.
Yeah.
Orthodox churches, at least in the homeland, don't have parish councils.
Right.
That's like a part of the corporate structure of Protestant style organization structures.
Wow.
And that's also that kind of that democratic, everybody has a vote kind of thing. But on that note, in places like Russia, you might have a number of cathedrals, a number of churches, and you can go to any of them. But sometimes there's not a meal afterwards, or you don't have a small town community that interacts afterwards, or the whole place is Orthodox. You go to this cathedral one Sunday for divine liturgy, and you go to another for Vespers or whatever. But in America, guess what? We have tight knit parish communities.
Yeah. And you
That-
know, Nathaniel's saying parish councils are very often women led.
So yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up, Stephen, because you know the Roman Catholic Church experienced escape velocity from its ethnic roots more totally than I see with Orthodox parishes, right? You know, you go to an Orthodox parish and it's like, okay, I've just landed in Russia or I've just landed in Greece, you know, whereas, you know, the Irish and to a lesser extent the Italians, but the Irish and the Italians, you know, you might go to a place that's named after St. Anthony or St. Roch or what have you, but it all feels very American. You know what I mean? Like they blended in a way that you know the Orthodox has sort of stayed a little bit more ethnic. And I'll be interesting. I think Paul's point, at least the way I'm hearing it, is that it'll be interesting to see this influx of Americans. You know. Of all variety of ethnic stripes entering in, and you know what's the difference between a Russian thing and an Orthodox thing? Like, what's the difference between a Russian, a Greek thing, and an Orthodox thing? And I think that'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. You know, because those roots are deep. You know, because even in little like New England towns up here, you know, you've got like the Portuguese parish on one side of the village green, you've got the Irish parish / French parish on one side of the village green, and on the opposite side of the village green, you've got the Italian parish. You know, it's like, I thought it was Roman Catholic. Well, yeah, but you know, it now in my lifetime, all that's gone, right? In terms of Catholicism, there's no such thing as ethnic Catholicism in any sizable way now. It's more propositionally sorted than it is or liturgy style sorted now than it was back, you know, in the 60s and 50s and earlier.
And the Christian Reformed Church, its entire history from the 20th century on has been a wrestling with this question of ethnicity.
Yeah, Paul, you grew up in Patterson. Like, that was a racial reconciliation parish. Like, I mean, that right there is you could argue it's already a new church because it's escaping, you know, it's escaping the orbit of ethnicity, Dutch ethnicity, right?
Yeah, and then the burning the wooden shoes moment for the denomination. Right. And it was a Dutch immigrant that, of course, yeah, we should burn the wooden shoes. Well, you as a Dutch immigrant have absolutely no idea, as opposed to someone whose family's been in here 75 years longer than yours.
Yeah.
Because as an immigrant, in some ways you see ethnicity better, but in another way you don't. It's all of these, you know, it's all of these difficult things. And you know, so again, reading Carlos Erie's Reformations, just reading about the medieval Catholic Church and the secular clergy and the secular clergy and the regular clergy,
right,
and then when I
because
heard,
remember that process is we tend to think of it like, you know, the church existed and then we have all these orders, right? But it's really kind of the other way around.
Yes.
It's really the orders precede the sort of the building out of the structures of secular Catholicism, and what I think that's an often misunderstood point. In fact, a lot of my friends believe that the secular church will go away, and that it'll be the orders will rise up again to kind of bridge the gap. You know, Paul, I've always thought of the Reformation's idea is the lab leak hypothesis, right? That the great failure of the church with Luther was Luther left the lab or was kicked out of the lab, because in other words, you know, I remember the first time that I read a Protestant history of the church, and I remember just being like, what? Like, what are you talking about? You know, and because and because when you hear a Catholic tell church history, is like we forget about the East for a second, right? Blah 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 blah, and then we get to this this pivotal moment where Martin Luther, bangs the theses on the door, and that's when the Protestant Reformation began, right? And so so right. I mean, so this is the way that the story is sort of told, and it's like that rascally monk who decided to sort of break ranks, and then you read a Protestant history of it, you're like, well, for many years and generations before, you have all these sort of these versions and this, that, and the other, and if you're an Anglican, I remember it was an Anglican history of the church, and so of course who figures prominently in there is Zwingli and the Lollards and all this. I'm like, wow, they're claiming that, and so if you think about it, then if you think of it this way, Francis of Assisi could very well have been the first Martin Luther, because there were precedents of Francis. And part of the reason why Francis got in such hot water initially is because the establishment church was like, oh, here we go again. We've got another organization of the free spirit or what have you. But they were able to keep him in the fold, and therefore opponent process the actual institutional church to rebuild itself and reinvigorate itself with that spirit. Imagine, Paul, if what is it, Cajetan? If Cajetan and the boys had actually been able to sort of absorb Luther, because again, I know I'm going to put myself in trouble here with my Catholic friends here, but Luther had some really important things he had to say, and they were really true, right? And so imagine if that had not leapt out of the lab, leaked out of the lab, but it had rather been, it's an interesting sort of what if.
Well, and the church did that in many other places.
Yep.
Because they had to respond to Luther, because they knew, they just saw this fire burning in, of course, the Holy Roman Empire, and it would catch in other places. And they didn't want to lose Italy and France and Spain. And so, the church, and I think that was great about Carlos Erie's book, because he shows basically that, okay, Luther, that got unmanageable quickly, but in other places they were able to sort of manage this. Now you had St. Bartholomew's Day, of course, in France, where 50,000 people died in one day. It's just kill them quick,
right,
and squash but then France sort of pays for it with the French Revolution.
That's right.
And so there are realities that are not finally denied, and so that's where we get to this point now, where it's so interesting to watch the Orthodox really come on the scene.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What excites me, Stephen, is minus the numbers issue, and Paul, that's a fascinating stat. I didn't realize that the Orthodox and the COCs are actually larger.
Well, the non-immigrant Orthodox.
Right. Okay. So okay, that's a good distinction. But I'm fascinated because, especially with what's going on with the mess of the hierarchy right now, in my opinion, a lot of people like me, are looking to your church, Stephen, and be like, man, the liturgy is really good, like really, really good. And they're not scared to be weird. And they care about the ancient roots. Well, if you're me, it sounds like absolutely perfect for me, right? So now I'm really hopeful. What if we, again, in sort of this model of opponent processing, right? If this model of opponent processing can sort of really do some work, we could have a real generative force here, because, in my opinion, it's I'm Catholic. I am Catholic to this day because an evangelical best friend of mine back in 1992 witnessed to me, right? I was I had left the church, I was gone, but my best friend was like, man, there's just something so compelling about this figure of Christ in the Gospels, and that struck me in an important moment, right? So then that was a way that I kind of got opponent processed. Maybe from one vantage point it failed because I stayed Catholic, or I became Catholic again, I guess, but what about the ways in which, I guarantee you, if you could sort of send, 50 Catholics to a divine liturgy, 20 of them would walk out being like, man, why is my church not like that? And I believe it would be that high. And if you scaled it by generation, I'm 51. I would say that the people my age and younger who still bother to go to Catholic church, I bet like 75% of those people would be like, I like that. Because they're already ready to experience formalized liturgy. But what if it was seriously done?
And then we also have Catholics and Orthodox that just they want to go to the mega church.
Yeah.
I regularly run into, there's a decent Greek Orthodox presence here in the Sacramento area. And I regularly run into former Orthodox who I just had to get out of there. It was, it was stifling. It was rote. It was all of this stuff that you heard, let's say, the Jesus movement. So in many ways, the mega church is just the product of the Jesus movement in the 60s and 70s. And when I see this, I just see Christ continuing to renew his church and give people, give people a way to come back. And even if they're coming back in strange ways, and yet all of these issues, the issues, like, when we're talking about money and many of these other questions, the issues don't go away. You have to live through them, and you have to pay the costs associated with the decisions you make with respect to them. But the issues don't go away in this dispensation. So
right.
Any thoughts you had, Stephen? You're not at the conference, are you?
No.
You're at work?
Yep.
Okay. Did you get a virtual ticket, or have you seen anything on social media?
No.
Or talked about the conference?
Oh, well, again, part of my story is I was single and beautifully alone in my apartment, reading 10 books a month, to flash forward, getting married with 2 kids in 2 years. So
congratulations.
So my money and my time are my wife and my 6-month-old and my 18-month-old.
Indeed, as it should be.
But I'm definitely following it and keeping tabs. But on that topic, though, I think so. I like, Gavin Ortland. He has a little bit of a YouTube presence and presence. And
I know who
Twitter.
he is.
I love following his videos because I grew up in the Church of Christ.
Is that the denomination he's a part of?
No, he's a Baptist. He's a Baptist preacher of some pastor of some sort, something like
Baptist.
that. But I've forgotten.
Baptists don't know what they're doing. But anyway, go on.
I've forgotten a lot of the ways that my old, Church of Christ people used to think and see the scriptures and see church and all that. So I love watching those videos to remind myself, and actually still man somebody who's still in the tradition. Yeah. But speaking to Kel's point about, you take 50 Catholics who are maybe yearning for a more traditional liturgy, they go to divine liturgy, and have a great experience, and counterattack that with all these ortho bros online, who are going to that same divine liturgy and getting on Twitter and having very Protestant conversations.
Yeah.
But the weird thing being Orthodox is, some of us do have the inside knowledge that you can't express online.
Yeah.
Like social media is purely you can call it a Protestant, or it's what Vervaeke calls the propositional.
Yep.
That's the only way you can communicate on Twitter and these conversations and things like that. But with Orthodoxy, there is still a mystery to it, and it's still an initiated sacramental rite.
Yeah.
And coming from the Church of Christ to Orthodoxy, the issue that I think a lot of Orthodox people have is we do have a genuinely different insider's knowledge of a phenomenon.
Well, and that's so important, right? Because it's like the difference between exoteric and esoteric knowledge, right? You know, like I can go, and I do think this is what I love about poetry. Just sort of side note, you know, is that orthodoxy. I mean, look, religion should be experiential, right? And you could abstract out these exoteric things that you could stick on a piece of paper on a spreadsheet, but that's ultimately left hemispheric. I think what you're pointing to is this notion that, you know, to really know a thing is to live it out, right? It's like you know, it's like, you know, this as a married man, like to sort of, you can know about marriage, right? You know, all day long, but now that you're married, you've got 2 kids. Like, what did I think I knew? I knew nothing, Jon Snow, right? You know, it's like, it's like, and now you know, like loads, right? So to me, it recaptures this pre-modern sense of knowing, right? Which really gets me to sort of, Paul, your project. I mean, I think that's what we are really wrestling with here in the corner, is we have really shrunken down this conception of knowledge to like just that.
Yeah.
And like, oh, it sits on top of a world that you have to ultimately experience.
Yeah.
You know, that, and I really appreciate that when I listen to my Orthodox friends, you know, that, you know, that is what's stressed. And I think that's the greatest thing that an Orthodox priest can tell to a catechumen, it would seem to me, is it's like, just like, don't talk for 2 years. It's like, live it out, breathe it, sweat it, you know, all of that, you know.
And I think, I mean, the Orthodox are having something that a lot of Protestants would call a revival in America right now, and that should be celebrated. And I celebrate that. And revivals are great. They're exciting. They're fun. God is doing a work in the church. He's bringing in people, and it's an Orthodox style revival. And this is what God uses in times and places to build his church. And there'll be hard days to come too, but it's always, I mean, the world is so big and these things are always so uneven. Go ahead, Cal.
So Stephen, to your point about this, there's an interesting quip from John Paul II. This was years ago, and I can't place it, so apologies, but he was being asked about pornography, something like that. And he said, you know, he's like, look, it's not that pornography shows too much. It does, of course, right? But ultimately it shows too little. It can't possibly capture the mystery of embodied, you know, sex, intercourse, you know, that it is sort of lived out, you know, from within it. And so I wondered, again, look, what's the most powerful thing on the internet? Pornography, right? You know, and I think there's because it can extract and abstract out sort of this sort of very powerful sort of, but ultimately very, very limited thing, that like when I think of my own students, for instance, who get exposed to pornography too early or what have you, you know, my concern is that they think they've seen it all, and I, you know, the 3 of us can say quite clearly, and no, it's they see nothing, they know nothing. Ultimately, and that's the sad part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great illustration, Cal, that you can't, and I often, well, that's just the way life is, and that's part of what we're dealing with these screens is there's always an inside, and for good and bad, because people sometimes they know the inside and they want to get the heck out, but it's. No, and I'm really happy for this conference, and I'm glad they made it, and they'll learn some things, and I want to keep learning from them, and I want to keep. Yet it's the Protestantism is sort of the experimental wing of the church, has long been, And so I think part of what we are wrestling with in this little corner is, okay, we have these new tools. These tools change us. And so part of what you can't deny about, and again, Carlos Erie sets this up beautifully in his book, Reformations. I mean, he begins in 1450 when Nicholas V, he's living in the Lateran Palace, and he moves over to the Vatican, and he has a plan. And he wants to tear down the 4th century St. Peter's and build a new, bigger, better one. And so he gives a plenary indulgence to anyone who does a pilgrimage to Rome, and the money rolls in. And he's like, oh. And well, that is going to set up a string of events.
Yeah.
That's going to lead to, Tetzel and Luther.
Yeah.
And,
That's right.
And people sometimes go to the Vatican. They're like, wow, St. Peter's the Vatican. I say, yeah, it only cost them half of Germany. That's
right. And all of England and et cetera.
Yeah. So it's history is like that. And
well, this is Peterson. I mean, this is Peterson. It's like, nobody ever gets away with anything.
No.
And that's a perfect illustration of an unintended cost. You thought you were buying St. Peter's Basilica. You did, but you bought something along with it too.
Yeah. And we're in this technological space now. Then the next chapter, he goes into everything that happens. He looks at the reformers, and they're all born in this tiny little window. And he says, what's with that?
Yeah.
What's with that? That's not nothing.
Yeah.
And you had Columbus, and of course, and then the printing. I mean, Columbus and the printing press together. You think about, and we are unconscious of most of ourselves. I realize this. I talked a little bit about the fact that I've had a little bit of, I don't have writer's block. I get video block sometime. And a lot of people are like, you sure don't look like you ever have video block.
Yeah.
But I've had it enough. I don't have to get it very often, but it's usually because something is being birthed in me, but my conscious self doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then boom, I get to the end of it and I have an insight and a realization, and I see something. It's like, oh, okay. Now I have to figure out how to roll that out. But there's tons going on right now.
Yeah. I mean, think about that though, Paul, just like, oh, ho hum, Columbus discovers there's like an entire half of the globe that we've just have not been conscious of. That might have a way of changing things just a little bit, right? And it's funny, we're all so familiar with that. It's like 1492. We're all so familiar with it that we just forget. Wait, but what would that have been like to all of a sudden discover that what you thought was this is this? I mean, and you can do a whole reading of the canon, right? The great books, right? You could do a whole reading that is just like a riff on North and South America. Like, this is new, right? And who's, Shakespeare's writing at this time, I mean, it's like within that 100-year period, I don't know, man. It's just, we underrate it, oddly enough, as much as, we all know about it. We think we know about it, but we don't.
And it was almost like if we had gone to the moon and discovered civilizations.
Yeah. Right.
It'd be like, what, and civilizations that were sort of like us. They were like us enough that we could have sex and babies with them.
Yeah, that's right.
But almost nothing else sort of works right. Oh, by the way, they're still practicing human sacrifice. What's with that? And just look at the way that sort of permeates. And of course, the Europeans go over there. The rest is history. Just did an excellent series on Cortez, and people kind of complained it was 8 episodes long. But what they nicely showed in that series on Cortez was, Cortez was a deeply religious man.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a killer.
Yeah.
He was also completely mercenary, but they'd always had mass on the beach. And of course, and then, well, we have to save their souls. Well, do they even have souls?
Mm-hmm.
And how does religion and slavery work? I mean, there's so many issues on the table. Well, and now we just go back and say, oh, we discovered the world was round. No, not really.
So it's like, obviously they have souls. You're like, okay, but we kid ourselves. Look, I'll insert the moment here. I mean, what if the aliens thing is real, right? And again, I know I've just probably destroyed Paul's channel here, but but I mean, this is exactly what we're going to have to face. Okay, so again, if we're all about patterns and looking at patterns and navigating patterns and guess what? We're staring a new pattern, a new iteration of an old pattern right in the face, and it's about to blow us all up.
And we're, the printing press. I mean, Erasmus, that book, Fatal Discord. Mm-hmm. Erasmus said, just the fact of you've got the Vulgate and then you've got a Greek text and Erasmus's notes next to it. And the fact that you don't have to just be some monk somewhere. Now, thousands of people can afford to buy this. And of course, the Vulgate was divinely inspired, but now it's staring you in the face that Jerome, basically,
massage some things. Yeah, of course.
build it out. Now, Jerome wasn't intending, but
Right.
the whole conceptual philosophical thing. And then, the book that in many ways just sort of blew my mind, Brett Sockold's, transubstantiation book. I was reading that and it's like, oh, of course, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the Orthodox are in. And so in some ways, the Orthodoxy, although you've made a number of landings, if you read Molly Worthen's Apostles of Reason, the Orthodox have sort of been pinging the West a number of times. But it was the fall of the Iron Curtain that really brings in both Ukrainian and Russian evangelicals and charismatics into America, into Sacramento. But also, it's not just the Greek Orthodox now, it's all these other orthodoxies that were behind the Iron Curtain. And so Paul Kingsnorth joins a Romanian monastery church
in Ireland.
Yeah. And it's this kind of little stuff that generates exactly what we're living through. So it's a really cool time to be alive.
It is.
And so Stephen, you're part of this. You're part of this Orthodox revival in America. And that's a super cool thing. And maybe 100 years from now, Richard Rowland will be, he'll be canonized or whatever they call it in the Orthodox Church, or he'll be, there'll be hagiography that you'll write. I was with Richard Rowland in his backyard around the campfire, and we were reading, Dante. And tell me about Richard Rowland again, Stephen.
Yeah,
this is such a cool time. And the thing is that with any significant substantive movement, there will always be criticism, opposition, sniping, petty jealousy. All of that stuff always comes with anything significant. So don't let it bother
and
you.
we always underestimate just how messy and dirty and icky everything is.
Oh yeah, we're living the life, because at least we're not killing each other over this. I mean, Luther had to get abducted to save us. They knew what to do. So, well, we've gone on. I've gone on for like two. Go ahead, Stephen.
No, I mean that's part of the it's a blessing and a curse coming from long tradition ethnic churches mixing with a people that only been around for a couple hundred years that basically are taught to erase their history with every birth they have.
Yeah.
But we're used to speed and that evangelical side that wants to make things popular and more widespread. But as time goes, and Father DeYoung says this all the time, maybe in 500 years we might have an American Orthodoxy.
Right.
And there's some of us that understand that our roles are so small. Yeah. And even speaking with what Luke and everything was talking about mammon, you have to have a good relationship with mammon, because if you think you can get out of this world as a Puritan, you can't move, every corporation.
You're talking to a
well, what I mean is what's that?
What do you mean a Puritan?
Well, just like the conversation of, even when it comes to, even Kel was talking about, would it be better if I got a job making $300,000 a year, or follow a meeting and do something else? Or, how do we handle the fact that churches have to be paid for? And some of that money is going to come from the defense industries that our parishioners work for.
Right.
It's like, are all of us supposed to quit our jobs because we have to have pure income sources? No. It's just we live in a weird time.
The weeds of the wheat grow up together. We have to always remember that.
Yeah.
And it's not always clear which one is which, frankly.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
But our whole American system is designed for the office life and commutes and 2 cars and suburbs. So, I mean, that's just our system. And if you want a job and you want a family, you want to make some money and raise Orthodox kids, you're going to work the sales job where you're selling some product that you don't really care about, but it makes you a lot of money and it makes the, Pfizer more profitable or what have you. But guess what? That's just your little, role that you have to swallow and go to as many services as you can during the week and raise Orthodox kids, But
well, that's why it was so fun to have Rick Walker when he came on the channel. It was like everyone just,
I remember that. Yeah.
A podcast from the mansion, and I'm on a channel together with Donald Trump Jr. and I mean, all formations have. I mean, to have any reality in this world means there's any boundary is going to have boundaries. It's just the way it is. So.
All right. It's just I think it's just the murkiness that some of us Orthodox people are. Some of us have a wholesome idealism. We kind of see what the world could be or what a good Orthodox country could be, and it's true and good and beautiful and wonderful. And then we have our day-to-day lives, and it's just a matter of sorting it out,
Yep. Well, I am any last thoughts? I don't Upcycle, I haven't uploaded the choo-choo yet. I haven't. I don't have the choo-choo branding. I got to get the choo-choo branding on there. So I'm gonna my outco will be I'm gonna go back to Dog Bark and his Psalm 1. I found that the other day. So Dog Bark I think has 14, 15 subscribers, and I got to do a randos conversation with Dave. So Dave, I'll tell you a little bit of Dave's story. Dave used to be a painter, and he was involved with a whole bunch of different churches and stuff. And then he had heart surgery, and he didn't really recover from heart surgery. He basically had about a dozen years kind of in the twilight, a lot of it in bed, but just didn't have any strength. And about 6-8 months ago, he'd been watching the Freddie and Paul show and leaving comments on the channel. And about 6-8 months ago, it was like he kind of woke up and had strength again. And he's like, I want to go to church. And so he takes an Uber he said, where am I going to go to church? Well, I'll go to Living Stones where we have the Freddie and Paul show. So he shows up one day and,
so
Freddie says, Dog Bark's here. I said, what? He said, Dog Bark's. I didn't even know he lived in Sacramento. And he comes in. And so now he's a regular on the Freddie and Paul show. And he obviously loves music and he plays the harmonica. And so he's putting stuff on his channel. He's been twice on Pine Creek, who was the guy that Nathan Ormond, kind of took Nathan Ormond out of Christianity. He's been on Pine Creek a couple times. Like, Pine Creek ain't going to turn Dave away from Christianity. It's not going to happen. But so Dave does just a beautiful version of Psalm 1. So I picked it up and said, this is going to be branding. So
hey Paul, just before you sign out here, I really do want to talk with you about a TLC Defense Against the Dark Arts class.
Okay.
Just at some point, because I did get a green light. I'm going to do a senior elective, and I want it to be very TLC inflected. So just FYI.
Do you want to do that talk online, or do you want to do it offline? What do you
Whatever
think?
you want. I mean, I think people might like it, but
okay.
I'm happy to do it. Just bantering back and forth on email too. No big deal.
Okay. We'll figure that out. I'll send you an email or a DM in Twitter. That's easier to find in Twitter. That's
same.
Thanks for letting me bomb your conversation.
No, Stephen, thanks for coming on. It's great to meet you. Yeah, and it's great to hear a little bit of your story. That's I really love it that some of the other channels are doing randos conversations and knitting the community together. So that's what it takes. So all right. So thank you all. And we will leave here with Dog Bark and his rendition of Psalm 1. He does it beautifully.
Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.
Fast Freddy Geek knows it all. That's my old name, G.